Uh, Good evening. My name is Juan Carlos Dienderas, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. And I hope this is going to be useful for all of you. You know that the pandemics have created new challenges and also new opportunities for us teachers. And one of the main difficulties has been how to engage students in the digital and distance learning. At the beginning of the pandemic last year, you probably remember that many teachers had to improvise and they had to learn new ways, new methodologies, and they had to learn the use of new materials, new platforms, because everything was different than what it was before. Face-to-face learning, of course, implied many things, such as following a methodology, engaging students, developing a lesson, making transferences, and in the end, making students actually learn. But the pandemics, as I said before, we had to face new challenges and new ways to teach and new ways in which students had to learn, in which the digital aspect had to take a main issue, a main factor, and we had to centralize really our teaching in how to involve our students through or via a screen or a digital device, such as a telephone, a tablet, a computer, even a TV screen. So many teachers in the world have been working on how to make this teaching and learning successful. Because in the end, what we really want from our students is to learn. It's not really delivering a class or developing a lesson. What we want our students is to learn and to enhance their capacities, their abilities, and their skills. So today we have a wonderful lecturer, Mr. Jason Downs. Mr. Jason Downs has been working with students in the United States for quite a long time. And I want to introduce you to Dr. Stephen Brown. Dr. Brown has been working in education. He's a PhD in education and has been working in education for the last 30 years. In the last 30 years, he has trained not only students, but also teachers. Thousands of teachers have been trained by Dr. Stephen Brownson in distance learning education, so we can say he's an expert in this area. Let me introduce you, Stephen Brown. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here. Hello, Juan Carlos.
Welcome you. Yes. See you later.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Juan Carlos. My name is Dr. Stephen Brownson, and I've been training teachers since 1990, over 15,000 teachers in single subject, multiple subject, basically K through 12 education. In addition, I'm in the real world during this pandemic. I've decided not only am I going to train the teachers, but since January, I've been in preschool through 12th grade, regular and special education classrooms. I've also worked with second language learners and special needs students, both online and on site. My doctorate is in instructional design and online learning. My master's, one is an MBA, the other is multicultural diversity, Mexican American studies. I have 6 credentials: special education, bilingual, multiple subject, and a national credential of English as a new language. But the most important thing that I've learned that Jason shows is how to teach effectively online. Recently, I've been working with a group of 4th graders in the afternoon, 3rd graders in the morning, and 2 months before that time period, I worked with special needs students online, including autistic students, and I found 5 things. It's critical and all about relationships. Effective and well-planned instruction is vital. You need to know your students, their funds of knowledge. You need to know their interests, the government or site curriculum, and how to effectively deliver it without just talking at the learners for 30 minutes to X number of hours. In addition, for English, it has to be fun, fast, and flexible, along with skills and support in order to guide students to success. The fourth one is you have to gain their trust and confidence. And finally, use multimedia. Now, what I wanted to do is today we are going to introduce the fabulous Jason Downs. He has a master's degree in English from California State University, Los Angeles. In addition, he was one of my top 5 students. Out of probably the 600 that I've observed, Jason is in the top 5 for several reasons. Number one, he's a dynamic educator and he's a department head. In addition, he knows how students learn, especially with English. Both of us are experts with working with English language learners, and he has the classroom management skills. So without any ado, I wanted to introduce Mr. Jason Downs. Today, he will be talking about Introduction to Teaching English Language Arts Online. And Mr. Downs, the floor is yours.
So hello, my name is Jason Downs. As they've said, I have worked with students in English for quite a while. I've been in education for going on, I'd say about 8-9 years now, and I am department head of a small school for English in South Central Los Angeles. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. And this is just an introduction to teaching English language arts online. And so, yeah, let's get rolling. So I basically break this down into 4 sections. So I talk about preparing the digital classroom, planning the digital classroom, running the digital classroom, and then reflecting on the digital classroom. In order to run an online classroom, you need to do all 4 of these. All 4 of these are necessary to have the best online learning experience. So the first one I want to talk about is just preparing a digital classroom. I'm going to go ahead and start that at the unit level. So when I talk about starting classrooms at the unit level, clarity and simplification are key. When you prepare a digital classroom, you need to make sure that you have clear, easy to follow directions posted for your digital classroom links, which could be things such as your Zoom, your Google Hangouts, etc. Assignments, or any school or class announcements. So when I give any of these out, I make sure it is clear, easy to follow, so even parents who are not used to the way my classroom runs are able to understand what is being asked of their student. And then make sure that all of your assignments and resources are always organized and labeled. Now, while working with digital or with students in various schools,
Una tapa, con la tapa roja.
in northern and southern California, I have seen 2 common errors in the way that I am seeing digital classrooms being built. Now, the first error starts with that students are overloaded with information. So this means that students are given 2 to 4 posts per day in each class, and they become overwhelmed. To give you kind of an idea of what that looks like, if we are talking, they are getting 4 posts per class, and they have 5 classes. This is 20 posts a day that they are expected to read. That is a lot of information being given to students. So in high school, and especially middle school, students are learning to balance their schedules and their classes on their own, specifically in middle school. With online instruction, your clarity and economy of language is absolutely key, which means it is the #1 thing when it comes to directions. Now, the #2 thing that I am seeing in classroom is that students do not give teachers do not give enough information, and students therefore become confused. Students need explicit, clear instructions. You cannot assume they will figure it out. Do not tell a student to make a poster. Do not tell a student to create a movie trailer without giving them clear step-by-step instructions. I have come across assignments for middle schoolers that even confuse me with a master's degree with their complete lack of instructions or lack of exemplars or modeling. And I will go ahead and be talking about that a little bit and show you just kind of what I mean. Now, when we talk about preparing the digital classroom, your quality versus your quantity of assignments is key. You need to make sure you are giving quality assignments, not a lot of assignments. So, in distance learning, students are struggling more than ever to complete assignments on their own. And this is due to a lack of in-person support from a teacher. If you are asking a 6th, 7th, even a 10th grade student to write an essay by themselves without your support, when they start to make small errors, you can't expect them to do it quickly, okay? So while we assume students can complete a large amount of work due to their home environment, that is not the case. Assignments need to be carefully chosen to have the most educational impact. For example, and this is a real life example from one of the quote unquote better school districts in the city I live in. I have a 6th grade student with a learning disability. In 1 week, he had 2 essays, a poem, infograph, Google Slides project, grammar flips assignments, HyperDoc, and that was just in ELA and history. He had 7 major assignments in ELA and history. And he's a student who had a learning disability and was already getting more of a reduced caseload. But there was no way he could have done that without my assistance. He's not getting the support he would have had at school. He's not getting the extra class period with a one-on-one resource teacher. So if you assign too much work, then the work is rushed, as students will struggle to keep up and their educational impact of the work is low. And what I mean by this is they're gonna rush through the work, try to just finish it, and it's not gonna affect their learning. If anything, it's going to actually hurt their learning. So, all in all, the whole point of those last 2 sides, when you are planning your unit, when you are preparing your digital classroom, you need to focus on high quality, high student lift assignments in text instead of rushing students to finish a large number of assignments that have little to no impact. I have also seen teachers, and what student lift means, what high student lift means is that students do the work. The copy and paste mentality that teachers are doing. They're like, let me put the answer in the chat and you can copy and paste, is outrageous. I see it in multiple classrooms with multiple students I work with. So we need to make sure that it is high quality assignments that the students are completing. 2, planning this digital classroom unit. Backwards planning. This is one of the most important things when it comes to distance learning, if not all of teaching. Backwards planning is a process that educators use to design their learning experiences and instructional techniques to achieve specific learning goals. You do this by first identifying their learning objective and planning your lessons to achieve said objective. So if my goal for the students of that day is to find the theme of a story, every single question, every single teacher move I do in class revolves around them exploring a theme, looking for the theme, but everything revolves around that final learning objective. And when we talk about backwards planning, it becomes really cool because let's say you're having them write a 5-paragraph argumentative essay. You can have them start working on the essay by gathering evidence and like basically arguing what this evidence means before they even get the prompt for the essay, because you will have already had them doing assignments and reaching learning objectives that are going to reach that learning goal that they don't even know is there. It is there at the end. Okay. And backwards planning is more important than ever in a digital classroom. Now, there are various ways backwards planning is framed, but the most common module is the one you will see on the right. So it's identify desired results, which are like your big ideas and your skills. You determine the acceptable evidence, which is essentially your assessment or your test at the end. And then you want to plan learning experiences and instruction, or essentially have lessons that are going to allow them to meet those goals. So while most teachers, it may seem you want to start with a lesson, this one has you kind of starting with the test and working backwards from there. It's a really amazing way to plan your lessons. Now, in my digital classroom, I tend to backwards plan around these 2 items. So before I even really start planning, I have to figure these out. 1, what is my essential question for the unit? And we're going to go over kind of what an essential question is on the next slide a little bit. And 2, what skills am I teaching my students and how am I assessing their learning? So to give you some examples of what that could be, the skill could be selecting evidence, identifying literary techniques, explaining themselves with writing, argumentative essay writing. And your assessment is going to be whatever you deem that acceptable evidence. So it could be a giant quiz, it could be short writing responses, it could be a big essay that they work on for a month. But whatever it is, you have to make sure that you are able to assess that skill. Now, when I talk about the essential question, this is going to be what grounds your unit. So this is going to be how you approach the text that you are going to be reading. So let's say, for example, I'm going to pick up a fairly famous text, a fairly popular text, Frankenstein. If I'm going to approach that text, my essential question may be around identity. It may be around science. But the essential question is what grounds your unit. So if your essential question is about identity, oppression, environmentalism, this becomes the lens for which students engage the text and practice critical thinking. To give you an idea of what I mean by that is if you are reading a text and your essential question is around identity, you are going to form your readings and your learning experiences and your assessments around that essential question. So, for example, if you approach the text of Frankenstein, you could approach it and go the science route, the Gothic route. You have a million routes you can take, but your essential question is the lens that you ground it in. So oftentimes we've been seeing identity and oppression being popular for the new digital age. And again, the essential question is what is used to analyze the text, not comprehend it. Students still have to understand what's being said. It's just analyzing. It just gives them a way to practice those critical thinking skills. Now, focusing on specific skills allows you to gain a way of measuring success and assessing your students. In the United States, specifically in California, these are often tied to our state standards. And these can be things like literary devices, writing, deciphering and exploring themes. But there are various elements of literature and various elements of English and writing that we use to measure student success. And this will not change if it's in person or digital. This is really important when it comes to planning a successful and preparing a successful classroom. Okay. Now, planning for a unit. Once you have identified the essential question or focus of the unit, and then the specific skills and the assessment method, then you need to begin mapping out the daily lesson plans for your digital learning unit. Okay. And when you begin planning, you really please need to remember quality over quantity of assignments. Good assignments, not a lot. Good assignments. And then high engagement texts and activities are best. Students learn best when they're having fun. Students learn best when there's pictures and colors. High engagement texts and activities are best. And lastly, I put this in red and made it really colorful because it is so important. Do not assume students will figure it out. I have a master's degree. I can barely figure out some of these assignments I'm given for my 6th grade student to work with. Model everything, which means always show them how to do it. Always provide exemplars, which means always provide them with an example of a correct way it is done. Scaffold as needed, and then have your simple, explicit instructions. Now, when you are planning for a digital classroom daily, always have something for them to do when entering class. Teaching bell to bell, which is from the beginning to the end, is so important. The second they come in to the second they leave, they need to be doing something. Because if they're not, then the class is going to quickly go downhill. So let's say they come to your digital classroom and you don't have something for them to do, and then their dog runs by. Their dog now has the attention, not you. So you always have to have something to do. I oftentimes have a do now or a mood meter, and these are really cool. Do nows for me, which literally mean do this right now, are review and preview. So I can see how well students remember the skills that we have already learned, which is a review. This is a good way for me to see, can I move on, or do I kind of need to reteach this? Because if I just move on, they don't know it. Or I can give a pre-assessment of the skill being focused on for the day, which is my preview, that can be used to measure student learning at the end of the lesson. We have to measure if they're doing well. So that's really important to have that review preview for that do now. Now, mood meters. I'm going to show you a couple. These are fun. I usually use these when students come in from either the weekend or essentially just to get them settled down while I do attendance. And these are purely socio-emotional. I often use these, like I said, the first class of the week, or when they come in off of a long lunch, or if I know they're kind of stressed out, just to give them a way to get off their chest how they're feeling. And let's say a student sends me a picture of one of them crying. Now, usually these would move and they'd be all fun, but they're all frozen for some reason. But let's say they send me one that's like really sad. I could be like, hey, you feeling okay? And then once they're like, oh, yeah, I'm just having a rough day. Then you can kind of check in on the students and make sure they're doing well. Mood meters are purely socio-emotional. So again, it just lets you get an idea of how they're feeling. So let's say a student sent me a 3, which is a guy kind of having a panic attack. I would probably be like, you doing okay? Now, some other examples of mood meters, and this is one that is actually moving, are using popular cartoons that the students are into. This will increase engagement because, again, like it's popular culture and it is something that they are interested in. And this is from a popular American show called Rick and Morty. I also have mood meters that use just words. So they have words that are red for angry, blue for sad, yellow for like excited and happiness, and green for the relaxed ones. also have one for emojis. Again, these have really no function outside of socio-emotional, which means outside of seeing how the students feel. A big part of running a successful classroom is making the students know you care about them. If they think you don't care about them, they won't learn from you. You have to let them know you care. So little stuff like this will really allow them to know that you care and you're going that extra step to just see how they're doing. Now, plan your pacing when you are planning for your daily distance learning. Students can get very bored during distance learning. The second you lose their attention, it's really hard to get it back. If you leave them sitting for long periods of time with silence, you will lose that attention. We are competing with everything online to get students' attention. Plan engaging lessons. Kahoot, for example, is amazing for a reading comprehension tool, and it will keep your students engaged. So you need to make sure that you have that high engagement. And the most important thing I'm going to say, because this is the most awkward part of digital learning, is you need to make sure that you plan wait time. Students need time to wait and process work. When I talked about the copy and paste mentality, that comes from trying to get assignments done fast. On Zoom, 2 minutes feels like 5 minutes. 5 minutes feels like 20. Use music to help you plan wait time. It gets awkward. It gets really awkward over Zoom. But wait time is key for getting students to work. So for example, there is a playlist of student-friendly music or lo-fi hip hop that I play so I can plan or pace myself and let students focus, because you need to have wait time. Wait time is very, very, very important. Now, limit your website jumping. Do not make students go to numerous websites in a lesson. Chances are some will get lost. Limit the amount of websites you use during live teaching. For every website you jump, you will have to give the students 2 to 3 minutes to get on that website. It's going to be a lot of wait time. I suggest you just stick it to one website, if not 2. Second, model and provide exemplars. I have said this so many times because of how important this is. You must show students how to do everything. Again, like I said right on there, I've mentioned this constantly. In my experiences, digital learning has a lot of teachers experimenting and trying new things. Sadly, most of these experimental lessons and assignments just fall completely flat when exemplars are not provided and students are lost when it comes to what to do. Everything that we do needs to be modeled, and everything we ask students to do needs to have an exemplar. Everything. 3, running the digital classroom. Now, these last 2 sections are pretty quick. First off, you have to have high energy. And just to be aware, this whole slide is about presenting yourself. So again, you have to have high energy. You are competing, and we are competing with YouTube and TikTok and all social media. You need to be energetic and keep their attention. Be positive. So many teachers complain openly to their kids about distance learning. Frame everything positively. The second you see a teacher mention that they are so unhappy they can't be back in the classroom with distance learning, you notice the students are like, oh, me too. And the class will start to get sad. Frame everything positively. I'm so glad I can see you all today. It's so fantastic to have you all here. You know, you all are always the highlight of my day. Those types of phrasings are going to really make your digital classroom such a better environment and make the student so much more engaged. Make sure your background is not distracting. As you can see, I have a back or a wall to my back. So no one accidentally walks behind me. And make sure that nothing inappropriate is also in your background. Student-friendly art. I have seen some pretty interesting Zoom videos of teaching during the pandemic of inappropriate things coming in the backgrounds. Make sure nothing's inappropriate. I live alone. I'm safe. No one's gonna walk by. But be aware if you have individuals in the background. Lastly, dress nicely. A lot of people are wearing sweats and hoodies. If we show up and act like we care, so do the kids. I have seen a major difference in the days when I wear a collared shirt rather than my hoodie and my beanie. Okay? They respond a lot better to the collared shirt. Now, tools. The most useful tool of all when you teach is the chat box. It does not matter what platform you use. Could be Google Chats, could be Google Hangouts, it could be Zoom, it could be Skype. They all have a chat feature. Some students do not want to talk, especially with their camera on. For example, on Zoom, when you talk, your camera and your thing becomes the whole screen. A middle schooler who is already filled with all this angst and self-conscious and anxiety doesn't want to have their face up in front of everyone. So some students just don't want to talk. So again, they could be shy, their mics could not work. There's a million reasons. So you need to use the chat to make the digital classroom interactive for all students and meet all students' needs. So I use the chat in 3 ways, for example. It goes public, so students can talk with each other and make their answers known to all. So I do this when I want them to either help each other with an answer or debate with one another. What you can also do is you can make the chat private, so they can only answer, answers can only be sent to me. So like I'll do this when I want to review student answers and select the best ones for myself or have students address a common misconception. Or you can just turn the chat off, which is never used in my classroom. You should just always have the chat on. You just should always have the students have an ability to reach you. So again, you need to make sure that you use the chat. It is your best tool. Now, on most digital classroom programs, again, Zoom, Google Hangout, Skype, etc., there are various tools. On Zoom, we have the Annotate tool. And this is, again, one of my favorites. So the Annotate tool will allow me to do cool things like type in the side here. I can draw arrows. I can even change their colors, and I can do a lot of really neat things. I can add stamps. So let's say I want to add stamps everywhere. I can just start putting like, your Annotate tool is going to be really useful, okay? Live annotating on text with students is key to improving comprehension. Oftentimes, the annotation tools can give students a purpose before reading to ensure they are paying attention while the teacher is reading. So let's say that we were about to read a text. I could very easily put on the side, while I read, look for details that show why Archimedes is mad. Okay, so you can give them a focus while you read. And again, these annotation tools are amazing. Okay. Now, lastly, there are tools that offer live supports for students, such as closed captioning, and it's offered on most digital classroom platforms. So you'll oftentimes see the CC, which stands for closed captioning. On almost all digital learning platforms, due to the rise in need to accommodate and differentiate for students who have special learning needs, closed captioning has become very popular. Okay. Now, reflecting on a digital classroom, the last and shortest section. The most important thing you can do as a teacher is to reflect and receive student feedback. When it comes to reflecting on my week as a teacher, I will focus on the various things. And when I say I focus on this, I highly suggest you focus on this as well for your digital classroom. Student participation. So this is verbal and in the chat. Student work completion. Number of students who mastered the skill that week, who were able to get that A on that test, get that B on that test. Number of students who did not master the skill that week, my C's, my D's, and my not passing. What seemed to work in class and what did not. Those last two are really important. Digital learning is brand new. Brand new. This is probably the first full year that digital learning has been a part of our essential global education system. You need to make sure you try new things, ask for students' feedback, and go with what works and abandon what doesn't. I see a lot of teachers who are doing things that do not work because they only work in person. You have to see what did and did not work and adjust your teaching based on that. And again, I think I kind of just mentioned this, but I want to make this very clear. Be sure to also ask your students how they feel about your lessons. Their feedback on these lessons is key, okay? You need to make sure the students like what you're doing. You may think you're the best teacher in the world, but if your students are hating every class, that means a change needs to be made. So make sure you ask the students how they feel. And that's also really scary. I will acknowledge as a teacher, it's scary to be like, did you like that? Because it puts you in a place of vulnerability with your students. But you need to do that in distance learning because that's going to really help out also that relationship with those students and will lead to more success. Yeah, thank you for your time. Also, just to add one more little teensy element, pop culture, adding things that students like is also very helpful. I add little things like this all the time so my students can giggle and be like, oh, I know what that is. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to stop my share and throw it to Mr. Brownson or Dr. Brownson.
Jason, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. What you showed was a critical element in how to reach both second language learners and English students in the virtual world. Very few teachers take the extra effort that you and others have done in order to engage the learners, make sure that they're mastering listening, speaking, academic reading, writing, and critical thinking. Also, Jason, would you like to tell the next two series that you'll be presenting on May 5th and May 12th, and then your workshop on May 19th?
Yeah, the next two series I'm working on is going to be, one of them is going to be teaching graphic novels in a digital classroom, which is essentially trying to bring that sorry, I'm talking, I get excited, I talk fast. I'll slow it down. I'm going to be teaching graphic novels in the digital classroom, which is bringing in multimodality, which is kind of teaching essentially how to teach comic books and that type, which I have over here, but I will not grab. And then the other one is engaging students in the digital learning classroom. And the engagement part is just showing you essentially and talking about how to engage students during this time, because it's hard. And like I said in my presentation, they don't want to turn their cameras on. Some of them don't want to engage. So finding those ways to engage, I'll be going over some really amazing opportunities and things for that. And I believe that's both of them, correct, Brownson?
Correct. And you have a special workshop 7 to 8:30 Lima time, correct? On May 19th. And can you tell them what benefits that they would have?
Well, that is just essentially, that is for the classroom management one, correct?
No, it's actually putting together all three of the webinars. It's a
Oh.
special workshop on May 19th.
Sorry, I got a little, I'm trying to like keep track of everything. Yeah, so on May 19th is essentially we're gonna be going through all these webinars and explaining kind of how to prepare your digital classrooms for success. It's just gonna be basically giving you the skills and tips on how to plan, run, and essentially be successful in your digital setting. These are going to be using my feedback, my experience, my own coaching I've gotten from my school districts, and essentially giving you kind of the way I've been able to be successful. Of all the teachers that I know who are doing distance learning, I hate to sound cocky, but I am one of the only ones who's successful. I am one of the only ones in my school district who is actually showing growth in the classroom instead of regression. So when I go and show these webinars, it will be essentially showing you ways to engage the students. So instead of playing catch up, it's showing you how to get ahead. And that's, the benefits of that, in my opinion.
And also, Jason is telling the direct truth. He was one of my top 5 instructors ever. He stepped into student teaching the first day, took over the class, had minimal behavioral issues, understands classroom management, how to teach English effectively. And I wanted to open this up to any questions, first of all. Did any of you have questions, comments, clarification for Mr. Downs?
Could I participate?
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Downs. This is Mr. Alcantara. This is the thing. What is one of your best warmers? Aside from asking students how they are doing, which is important.
So there's this amazing website called Padlet. So give me like 10 seconds, I'll get it pulled up. I actually should have had these pulled up. So there are learning platforms that will actually give you amazing ways to engage with the students. And Padlet is one of those. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up. So I'll just open up this one, for example. This is my random do now. So why would an author add graphics or visuals to an article? So this was asking, this is one of my smaller classes. Like essentially like we're going over like, why would they add graphics to an article? So here we can see students who are adding graphics to that article. And I can actually go over, and by the way, like I would have prepped these a little bit better if I'm like, oh yeah, but let me go ahead, and I think that this is a good one because I think this one is, yeah. So this one, for example, is for my ELL students. So you'll notice that it has the question and then it has it in Spanish. And then I have a sentence frame that the students can use. So Padlet is also fantastic. I really only use Padlet. Google Classroom also has this thing called Google Question, which they can ask a question and respond to one another. But those are generally what I use, just to kind of get an idea. So Padlet, Google Forms are cool. Google Questions, just, yeah, if you go, actually, good plug, the engagement section, we'll go over all of these. So that'll be super amazing. And I'll be sure to have all of these in the engagement, not all of them, but like a large number of ways to engage with the students for the Do Now in the engagement webinar as well. But Padlet
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Amazing. Thanks a lot.
Were there other questions or comments? And thank you very much, Ronnie. I really appreciate it. Because we want to make this as interactive. If you don't want to use your microphone, you can type it in the chat. And I also suggest using Pear Deck, Kami. And tell me if I'm doing this right, Jason. Is it Epic Stories or epic.com?
I think it's depends if they. I think it might be Epic Stories. There's a lot.
Yes, the students love it. I recently worked with several elementary age students, and they thrive just as the older kids. I use gradual release of responsibility, modeling, guided practice with the graphic novels, and then they move towards regular novels. Once they found out how great reading was, you're right, make them draw it too. If you integrate right left brain thinking, it works well. Were there other things that you wanted to bring up, English teachers, as well as any questions for Mr. Downs? She uses it for follow. Visual verbal directions are great, Elizabeth, for instructions. Well, I guarantee you, if you show up for the workshop, Mr. Downs will make it worth your while. And Mr. Dianderos, would you like to close, sir?
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Jason, for a wonderful presentation. I think it was really interesting for everyone. And one of the things I wanted to reflect on before closing this webinar is that the pandemics, again, has shown us new areas in which we could develop and where we could apply new techniques, new methodology, because of course, this is definitely different from what we used to have before. We teachers were trained at universities, pedagógicos. We were trained to face-to-face teaching and learning. But now the pandemics has shown us that we have to face new challenges. We have to sit in front of a mirror. We have to develop our classes and deliver our classes online using digital tools. And I guess that one of the things that helped us, we teachers, the most has been the sharing of ideas. The sharing of ideas in a sympathetic way has helped many teachers, because perhaps some teachers have more advantages than others. When I say advantages, I mean that they have a platform, they have internet connection, they have certain expertise in mastering the language, etc. But just guess what teachers in state schools in Peru are doing. With no connectivity, 1/3 of teachers in the whole country, they have no connectivity to internet. English has not been considered anymore as a subject, even though officially it still appears as a subject. So, but we teachers that we still have access to internet, to certain platforms, we have this advantage of, let's say, having technology, the opportunity to share ideas, like like in this webinar. And thank you, Jason, for sharing your expertise and experience and knowledge. Thank you very much. We have platforms that we could use, Padlet, Kahoot, Zoom, etc., and many others, Google Suite, Google Education. But at the same time, we have to stick to a methodology with flexibility. The methodology in which the lesson has to be decided. Jason has shown us how to engage students, how to motivate students, how to see if they are getting or if they're losing interest or not. But this also happens. How can we engage our students? How can we make them participate in class and actually learn? Because teachers every day, when I talk to teachers, they say, I don't know if my student is connected or not, because I cannot see him. The same could happen in here. If you're not interested in the class, you just disconnect and you get out of sight, and the teacher does not know, right? That's why it is so important that the methodology includes the aspect of engaging students, motivating students, making your class interesting, and using interesting materials, of course, digital materials in this case. So methodology is quite important, and Jason has shown us today how he can develop a very well thought class, planned class and thought class. The other thing is the training of teachers, of course. Training of teachers, not in just one methodology, but in what really works, as Jason said. Jason said repeatedly that we have to understand what really is working, try to use it more times, because the ones who are receiving the therapies are the students. So training of teachers is really important, not only in methodology, but also in the use of